The lazy answer is fate. The wrong answer is one mistake. Romeo and Juliet die because the whole world around them is built to make disaster likely.
Yes, if you reduce this play to bad luck, you miss the machinery. The tragedy is not caused by one person slipping once. It comes from a chain. Feud, haste, secrecy, violence, failed guidance, and then timing turns a crisis into a tomb.
So, the question is not, who messed up? It is, what kind of system makes two teenagers think secret marriage is safer than honest speech?
Exactly. Single cause explanations are too simple because the play keeps stacking pressures. Remove one pressure, and the ending might change. Keep them all, and the disaster starts to look almost built in.
Start with the feud, because people treat it like background wallpaper. It is not background. It controls the air everyone breathes.
Right, the play opens with public street violence between servants. That matters. Before Romeo and Juliet even speak to each other, Verona is already a place where family loyalty turns minor contact into a brawl. The feud is the base condition.
And the feud does more than create danger. It blocks normal options. If their families were not enemies, there is no need for masks at the party, no need for secret courtship, no need for a hidden marriage.
Yes. The feud does not kill them by itself, but it creates the closed room they are trapped inside. It makes honesty costly. It makes concealment seem practical.
Then the play accelerates. People call it romance. More often, it looks like speed with no control.
That is the next cause. Everything happens too fast. Romeo switches for Rosaline to Juliet almost instantly. They meet, swear devotion, plan marriage, and marry within about a day. Fast feeling is not the same as stable judgment.
And haste keeps beating caution. Friar Lawrence warns Romeo that violent delights have violent ends, but then he helps anyway. So even the character who sees the speed still feeds it.
Which is crucial. Haste is not just a teenage flaw here. Adults join it. The friar agrees to marry them quickly because he hopes private love might solve a public feud. That is not wisdom. That is a gamble dressed up as guidance.
Then violence steps in and changes the scale. Up to that point, there is still a chance this ends as a scandal, not a slaughter.
Exactly. Mercutio and Tybalt drag the plot into blood. Romeo tries to refuse Tybalt after the marriage, but he refuses without explaining why. That secrecy matters. Mercutio reads Romeo's restraint as weakness, fights, dies, and Romeo snaps and kills Tybalt.
That one street fight blows the story open. Banishment means the marriage is now not just hidden, but almost unusable. Husband and wife exist on paper, but politically and physically, they are split apart.
And notice how causes pile up. The feud produces Tybalt's rage. Secrecy stops Romeo from explaining himself. Violence removes control. Then the prince's punishment turns private panic into a long-term crisis. This is not one spark. It is a room full of fuel.
Let us stay with secrecy, because people often treat it as romantic privacy. In this play, secrecy is expensive.
Very expensive. Juliet cannot tell her parents about the marriage. Romeo cannot publicly defend his sudden change toward Tybalt. The friar's rescue plan depends on hidden potions, hidden letters, hidden movements. Once the truth is forced underground, every fix becomes riskier than the last.
And secrecy narrows who can act. Instead of a whole family network dealing with a marriage conflict, the future of two lives sits in the hands of a friar, a nurse, and a messenger who does not arrive.
That is how fragile the situation becomes. A healthy world has backup. Verona does not. One quarantined messenger and one unopened line of communication are enough to make Juliet look dead and Romeo act on false information.
Now the adults. People like to say the adults fail them, but that can sound soft, unless we name how.
Start with Capulet. He looks flexible at first when Paris asks to marry Juliet, but after Tybalt dies, he swings hard. He decides on a rushed marriage to Paris and then threatens Juliet when she resists. He turns grief and status anxiety into coercion.
And Lady Capulet is no help. She brings pressure, not understanding. Juliet has almost no safe route to tell the truth.
Then, the nurse collapses as an advisor. Early on, she helps the secret courtship. Later, she tells Juliet to marry Paris anyway. That is not practical wisdom. It is surrender. Juliet loses the one adult she thought was on her side.
And Friar Lawrence, who is often treated as the wise center, keeps making high-risk moves with teenage lives.
Yes, he means well, but the results matter more than the intentions. He performs the secret marriage, devises the fake death plan, and relies on a message system with no margin for failure. He is not the sole cause, but he repeatedly chooses complexity over truth.
So where does bad timing fit? Because there is timing all through this play, but it is not some mystical force floating above events.
Right. Bad timing matters, but only because the system is already unstable. Romeo arrives at the tomb minutes too early. Friar Lawrence arrives minutes too late. The letter misses him. But timing becomes fatal only after feud, secrecy, speed, and violence have already made every outcome brittle.
So, if someone says the tragedy is caused by fate, or by Romeo's impulsiveness, or by the friar's plan, the answer is too narrow.
Too narrow. Romeo's impulsiveness matters, yes. The friar's plan matters, yes. But the main cause is larger than any single error. The play shows a social system where hatred is normal, violence is quick, authority is unreliable, and honest speech is blocked.
Which also changes how we read the ending. This is not just two lovers making sad choices in isolation. It is a city forcing private feeling into dangerous forms.
That is the judgment. The deepest cause of the tragedy is the feud, because it creates the conditions for secrecy, speed, violence, and failed adult control. But the deaths happen because all those forces combine. In Romeo and Juliet, disaster is not one mistake. It is a whole broken world cashing out at once.